why don't we get started? I don't see anyone in the waiting room anymore, but I did see Lo, who was one of our presenters who just logged in.
Okay. Um, I'll jump right in then, Henry. And as everybody probably knows by now, I'm Douglas MacLeod, the chair of the REIC Center for Architecture at Athabasca University. And this is the second part of our portfolio workshop. I do want to share with everybody that Henry loaded up the part one of the workshop just, let's see, 4 days ago. And already it's got 1,161 views. So some of us were talking just before everybody joined us about maybe this suggests an interesting direction for the Global Studio, where we might look at ideas and more practical aspects of becoming an architect. And Karen suggested that perhaps something on internship and mentorship and getting that first job could be of interest. So these events, we're quite delighted. This, I think, is about our 11th lecture in the series. And it's going to, I think it's going to be a very interesting one. But I know we're going to be a little pressed for time today. So I'm going to hand it right over to Henry, except for the fact that I do want to highlight, just in case you leave before the end, we've got some very interesting things coming up in the next couple of weeks, always at the same time. So on the 14th, we're going to have a session about cultural sustainability with people from Zaha Hadid's office. And my understanding is that Patrick Schumacher is actually going to be speaking. And then on the 28th of January, Wanda Della Costa, together with the students at the AEDE, which is Advocates for Equity in Design Education, are going to be holding a workshop on equity in design education and design. So these are going to be some very interesting events, and we hope that everybody will be able to join us for them. But with that, I'll hand it over to Henry.
Thanks, Douglas. So I'd like to just welcome everyone to this second session of the portfolio workshop. As you know, the first one was on December 10th, and we had welcomed professors from different universities to speak about what they're looking for in a portfolio. So today in our second session, we have students who are going to present from each institutions their portfolios, and then we'll have a review session at the end. So before I start, I'll pass it to Veronica to introduce our speakers, and then we'll get started with the presentations.
Great, thanks, Henry. And thanks everyone for joining us here today. I particularly want to thank all of our students and guest reviewers for agreeing to participate in the session today. So today we have 6 presentations from our students. Lo, Stephanie, Zoe, Benjamin, Teya, and Nick are going to be presenting their portfolio. After their presentations, we're going to open it up to our reviewers to give comments on what they're seeing and suggestions, and we'll also open up to questions and answer period after that. So just to introduce our reviewers today, we have Rudolf Perold, who teaches architecture technology at Cape Peninsula University of Technology in Cape Town, South Africa. After his architectural studies at the University of Free State, he completed a part-time master's degree in Africa Studies while taking up employment at CPUT in 2007. More recently, he completed a joint PhD in architecture and geography at the University of Hasselt in Belgium and Stellenbosch, South Africa, engaging in live project research on architectural practice in the context of informal settlement upgrading. He teaches design and technology related subjects in the diploma and advanced diploma degrees at CPUT and is currently developing 2 further postgraduate qualifications in architecture, a postgraduate diploma and a professional master's degree. As coordinator of internationalism in the Department of Architectural Technology and Interior, he is excited about the prospect of further collaborations with the Global Studio. Thank you, Rudolf, for joining us today. We also have Karen Seong from the School of Architecture and Academy of Art and University. So Karen is the undergraduate assistant director of the School of Architecture at Academy of Art University. In on-site and online teaching, she seeks to bring inclusivity to architectural education. She is a contributing author in a forthcoming book on the pedagogy of examining identity formation within the architectural design studio. Prior to teaching, she held leadership positions at Skidmore, Owens and Merrill in New York and San Francisco, while working collaboratively with large international teams on award-winning projects ranging from high-rise to institutional buildings in the US and Middle East. She is a licensed architect in California and in New York and is a lead accredited professional. Karen has previously taught at UC Berkeley and has been a guest critic at various institutions in the US and in Korea. She holds a Master's of Architecture with distinction from Columbia University and a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture with high honors from UC Berkeley. Thanks, Karen, for joining us. Next, we have Dr. Francesco Mancini. He is an Italian registered architect and planner who is currently working with Curtin University as associate professor, School of Design and Built Environment, and acting deputy pro vice chancellor, Faculty of Humanities. He is a member of the Australian Architecture Program Accreditation Review Panel, member of the Board of Architects of Western Australia, and represents Curtin University at the Australian Association of Architecture Schools of Australia and the Australian Institute of Architects Educational Committee. Before joining Curtin University in 2015, Dr. Mancini has taught and researched since 1998 at the University of Roma Tre, where he served as a research fellow and assistant professor of architecture design in the Department of Architecture. He teaches philosophy. His teaching philosophy is based on learning as a social and collaborative practice, focusing on shared problem-solving strategies and approach. Dr. Mancini is an architectural theorist interested in urban studies, architectural language, and critical design thinking. He taught with international eminent scholar and architect Peter Eisman at the Cooper Union School of Architecture in New York. He also taught architectural design at the University of Waterloo, the School of Architecture Rome, the Pratt Institute Rome, and the Iowa State University College and Design Rome. Dr. Mancini practices in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and returned to Rome in 2001 to establish an architectural practice. Mancini has served as a design advisor for the City of Rome, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Chief of Staff Defense. He has published on Peter Eisman's book, Building Typology and Urban Morphology. Dr. Mancini holds a PhD from the University of Florence on conceptual representation of architecture in the work of Peter Eisman. Welcome, Francesco. And our last guest critic will be Dr. Henry Tsang, who is an assistant professor with the RAIC Center for Architecture at Athabasca University. So Dr. Henry Tsang is an architect and assistant professor with Athabasca University, RAIC Center for Architecture, based in Calgary, Alberta. He completed his Bachelor of Science Architecture and Masters of Architecture at McGill University and holds a PhD from the University of Tokyo in Japan. Henry possesses over 18 years of global design and teaching experience. He is a former senior architect with Japanese mega firm Nikon Seiki and has also worked with Nikon, AXS, Satao, Mitsuru, Senda, and Lamé Michat. Tsang has also held a professorship at Kim Young University in South Korea and directed the Sustainable Architecture Program at Herzing College in Montreal. He has been awarded Canadian's Educator of the Year by the National Association of Career Colleges, Robert Fung International Award of Distinction by McGill University, and most recently a Canadian Architect Award of Excellence for his design of the Calgary Japanese Community Center. Welcome, Henry, and thank you. So with that, I'll pass it over to Henry to moderate the morning for us.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. So without further ado, I'll start by asking our first student presenter to get ready. It will be Zoe Zhang. Zoe, can you start to share your screen, please?
Yes.
And just as a format, I'm going to ask all of the students to speak for 5 minutes, and at 5 minutes, I'll tell you to start to wrap up. And we'll have all of the comments done at the end after all of the presentations are finished. So Zoe, if you could start by introducing yourself, your university, where you're from, and then go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Zoe Tsang, and before I present my portfolio, I would like to quickly introduce myself. I'm from Southern China, and I like to draw since I was a child, and I have always been fascinated on how drawing space influences us in many ways, and this is what encouraged and inspired me to become an architect. I recently graduated with a B.Arch degree at the Academy of Arts University, where I have learned lots from different peoples and experience. And now I'm very excited to start my professional career. So my portfolio consists of 6 projects ranging from different scale. And for today, I would like to focus on presenting the first one. So the first project I would like to present is my final thesis project, Urban Living Room. The main idea of my thesis is to speculate on the experience of public library as an extension of personal space by exploring degrees of privacy in an anxious urban context. It encourage people who live in a dense urban conditions to interact with others while protecting their sense of privacy in different ways. What I mean by the anxious urban context is where the public space in the city has less boundary and limits for social interactions, where people don't feel comfortable to stay because of the emptiness and distance between things. So I used to live in Hong Kong. As we know, Hong Kong is one of the densest cities in the world, and high density and rents urge people to share living space with strangers. When the living space is too compact, people start seeking privacy in the public spaces. So for now, I live part-time in San Francisco. And San Francisco is similar to Hong Kong, where many people like me are co-living with other roommates. Lots of people are seeking privacy in public space. So the urban living rooms that I'm creating is aiming to extend their personal life into the space while creating the boundaries to protect the privacy. So the site is located right next to the Mission Creek in San Francisco, where there are many mid and high density residentials. The existing site is the public park featuring only a small numbers of benches, where is no sense of scale because everything was set as a great distance and there is nothing to block the winds coming from behind. So one of the traditional typology existing in all urban cities is the public library, and the library has equal access to everyone and the potentials of gathering people under the pressures of modern living. So a traditional library can be seen as a solid block because most of the activities happens inside of the block. And my idea was to break the scale of the site and create opportunities for different boundaries and social interactions. The massing studies are exploring different ways to break the big scales of existing site and traditional library programs. So the building was divided in 2 parts that connected by a bridge and to provide flexible circulations by using different materials patterns to guide people through the space as well as enhancing the relationship with the neighbors. Since lots of people come from the creek sidewalk, the building has more public programs toward the creek side, and such as cafes, galleries. For the backside, it consists of child's and teens program library, also the conference room. So children can read in the reading area and come up to the play area. And this is the render from the view from the adjacent units. The formal moves were not only a way to respond to the natural light and winds, but also create opportunities to either block the direct eye contact to the adjacent residential rooms or provide private program space for the users. People live in the adjacent buildings will be welcome to extend their daily activities into the urban living room when they can't find privacy in their units or just want to have a personal spot. So this urban living room is not just a library or public space for people to hang out, but also provide the opportunities for people to safely interact in their acceptable distance. So the second one is called rock climbing centers. This rock climbing center is focused on climbing as a reflections of the acculturation process that international students face when they come to the US. And I think rock climbing can become a bond experience among people, a group of people seeking to build their relationship. And so for the third project is called the Interlocking Donuts. It was a team project focused on the topic of housing and comprehensive design. And it's located in the Point Richmond in San Francisco. For the fourth one is the weaving ribbons. This was my third year's project focused on the site conditions and building performance. So for the fifth one, the robotic exoskeleton complex is to understand the behavior aspects of two living systems and bring these identities associated with the robotic exoskeleton to design the building space and the structure as well. So the last one is the immersive theater, was to explore the abstract geometry from the painting and to apply it to the contemporary urban context. So this is my portfolio. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoe. Moving on to our next presenter, I'm going to ask Benjamin if you could start to share your screen. Okay. And again, if you could introduce yourself and start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Benjamin Schindel. I was part of the online program at the Academy of Art University for my Bachelor of Architecture. And I live in Lacombe, Alberta right now. So my portfolio is consisted of 4 projects. And the main one that I'll focus on again is the thesis project. So for my thesis, I was looking at my town where I live, which is more of a small scale rural city or urban, rural city. And it has a history of the railroad and the city. And with the development that the city has had, it's divided the city into 2 kind of distinct spaces for living and working. And the railroad and the highway disconnect those 2 and kind of separate the walking spaces and the walking paths from being allowed on each side. So with my project, I look to kind of bridge that gap and introduce walking circulation pedestrians to encourage more walking in the city rather than reliant on vehicles to get to work and back. So with the site, I wanted to introduce kind of more than just a bridge that connects the 2 sides, but it'll also intertwine and weave together a program with that bridging area and create a destination on the more industrial side for people to want to come, not just to get from one point to the other, but also a place to create new kind of interpersonal or more new urban and green spaces within the city for people to spend their time at. And the development of the form of the building really relied on the existing access lines that were developed from the kind of existing infrastructure of the city, and then kind of manipulating and weaving to kind of create that crossing effect in the S shape that has by crossing not only the road, but also the access points of the city. And the program included mixed use of a museum that looked towards new technologies and energy and kind of a way to educate spaces, because a lot of small towns are really reliant on the oil and gas energy sector and farming as their main kind of industries that kind of help push the town forward. And I was just wanting to see and explore ways to really promote new ways and not kind of eliminate what's there, but also to kind of enhance what could be. And the other half of the program, which is the main part that kind of bridges over the road, is a large kind of flexible space tech center area that will encourage more technology-based and alternative industry to kind of come to the sound, to kind of create more opportunities for people to stay in the city rather than leave to find those kind of jobs. And I wanted to create kind of a visual clarity within the drawings of the things to explore the spatial conditions and the circulation throughout, and how that connects interior spaces to exterior spaces through sustainable practices, while also looking to explore and accentuate the structural systems within the program to show that bridging effect, but also allow for creating opening in spaces for the pathways to cross through the building. And that kind of generally formed based on the different kind of massing options that I was looking at, with the two that I was more focused on was 2 buildings on each side with a bridge across, or as one building as a whole. And just looking through different explorations of the concept of creating that building or those buildings along the access lines, or using those nodes where the access points cross as different factors to kind of shape and how people move across the site, was kind of the exploration of how that project has developed. And then the second project was the Environmental Science Learning Center, and it looked at how architecture can intertwine with the landscapes, and looking at the performance of the buildings and materials to minimize impact on the site with the development of the project. And then the third project was a kind of public workshop and learning center, is looking at how it can kind of intertwine that with how people move and how they migrate throughout the city during the day, and what people are doing to get to work, and creating an environment where people can come and learn new skills and practice those skills that they have, while also offering opportunities for quiet and loud, not necessarily just in noise levels, but in personal kind of either introverted or extroverted spaces for people to be comfortable however they see fit of using the spaces, but creating a more inviting environment for everybody to come and use the space. And the fourth project was a team group of Park City. It was a multifamily and mixed use space in Point Richmond. It's looking at developing the massing of the project through more of a modular kind of expression, where we used modular floor plan plates instead of modular units, and connected and shifted those plates to create their own kind of identity within the project itself, but still being connected to the project, and allowing stepping up from the water's edge up and creating rooftop terraces for each kind of unit to have their own private green spaces, while also still having access to the public courtyards in the main ground level. And that's my portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Benjamin. just pull up my list again. Unfortunately, we just got a message from Francesco that he has problems with internet connection around his area, so he might not be joining us today. Nevertheless, we'll just keep on going and see if he's able to join us if that gets fixed in the next few minutes. So let's keep on going with our presentations. The next student that we have on our list is Lo Kutsi. I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly. Lo, are you there? So Lo is from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Stephen, can you confirm?
Sorry, Cape Peninsula is not me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Henry, that's me. Lo is one of our students. It seems like he's struggling with his audio because the video is working fine. Lo, if you can just perhaps unmute. No, he's not on mute. Henry, I think Lo's got a bit of an audio problem. Perhaps would it be possible for us to skip ahead and then give him some time to sort it out?
Sure, thanks, Rudolf. So as Lo tries to fix his problems with the connection, we'll move ahead with Stephanie. Stephanie from Curtin University. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I'm just checking that I've got everything all set up. I think so. Okay. So this is my portfolio. It's set out a bit differently to the other ones that we just saw, in that I sort of do it as single pages, and I have a lot more written text in my folio than I do images. So sorry, now it's, there we go. Okay, so I have three studio projects, a thesis project, and a competition that I did with a friend in my folio. I will skip through the first one just because it's good, but this other one is better. So this Bridging the Gap project was a group project to redesign a large urban area. And after developing a master plan, we then split up into smaller groups to develop single typologies. So our master plan was on the foreshore in Perth, and Perth is on a river that does go out to the coast, only about 20-minute drive from the main city area, but it's still quite disconnected in that you'll find a lot of residential over on the coastline, and in the river you'll find more CBD district. So our whole idea revolved around developing a thoroughfare that went through the middle of this site to connect the western side of the CBD with the recently developed Elizabeth Quay, which has a lot more recreation sort of aspect to it compared to the surrounding business buildings. So we had these concepts of the cultural thoroughfare connecting to the bridges in the CBD, which the CBD main road is about, I think we worked out it's about 20 meters higher than our site. So we wanted to bring that connection through. So we raised up our site where possible. And then we also increased the density, because at the moment there are only a couple buildings on there, and there is a lot of roads and freeway ramps that form part of the site, which sort of make it difficult to navigate. And then I split off by myself to redesign a convention centre and an exhibition centre that would go in a corner of our master plan. So you can see this is the site. So the site is the entire curved form that goes all the way down over the freeway ramps and down to the water, and then carves back up and around and follows the city roads. And the highlighted area is the exhibition centre that I worked on. In an AXO format, it looked like this, and was developed because nearby there is a large national and state park that has botanical gardens in it, as well as a lot of reserve land that is untouched and native. So I was trying to bring in a lot of those forms to an area that is largely square buildings that are really tall. Because I had to incorporate a convention centre and an exhibition centre, the first 3 levels are just exhibition space. And it is there's no floor plates on each one. So from the ground floor to there, the first floor plate is at the ground floor, and then the next one is at level 3. That's all open space. And each exhibition hall can be opened up to create one large hall or whatever configuration works. As part of the brief, there is also a theatre, small meeting rooms, small private hire rooms, and then 2 different sized ballrooms. And there are areas for cafes and bars to go in there as well. I have a couple quick renders that I've attached to this. Because of the size of this project, my group had a lot of work for it, but a lot of it was group work and done as a collaborative effort. And in my folio, I've tried to limit it to just my own work that I've done all by myself and only highlights my work. So there's these renders showing just the entrance into the 2 spaces and the higher up entrance. And then I'll skip through this one and show my thesis project quickly. So my thesis project was a little bit different, and this is for a Master of Architecture, but it was what's called 70% written. So I have a lot of research and writing and arguing and only a small area in design work. So my project was to investigate the relationship between a resident's well-being and their home and trying to redesign a freestanding home so that it could improve the well-being of its residents. But then because I was doing this while COVID hit and we went into lockdown over here, that became an aspect that also shaped my project. And I started investigating how COVID has changed our relationship with our homes as well. So this is an outline of my, sorry, there we go, my apologies. This is an outline of my thesis argument and how it's evolved. So I had to outline the type of well-being I was referring to, and I looked into an existential concept where well-being is just our ability to handle daily life and also grow as people. And I outlined what that would look like, or what an architecture would look like that improved that well-being. And so that was shaped by the terms comfort, opportunity, enrichment, and challenge. I then started looking at different things to bring into that. So I looked at what the philosophy of a home is, what a home is supposed to be doing for people. I looked into how psychology improves well-being, and a large one within architecture is nature and light. So I used the nature aspect. And then I started trying to work out specific design elements that could be incorporated into a home that linked back to those 4 words of comfort, opportunity, challenge, and enrichment. So I ended up with investigating the concept of dwelling by Martin Heidegger, the concept of place by Christian Norberg Schultz, and then the concept of incorporating all of our senses into architecture, which has been evolved out of Heidegger and Norberg Schultz's arguments and is discussed quite largely at the moment by Juhani Pallasmaa. And these all split off into incorporating an earth-sky relationship, developing a relationship with control for the residents, creating structures that are adaptable and changeable to the residents' liking, promoting social engagement, making sure there is adequate privacy, and also creating thresholds that interact with all 5 senses rather than just visual. And I then, I then brought these back and made sure that each one of those design elements linked back to at least 2 of those 4 concepts that I used to outline well-being. And most of them linked to 3, and there are a couple there that only link to 2. And this all led to the design of a site which is about a half an hour from our city, but is quite a rural area and is hilly. There is a little water brook nearby. And there is, when I was out there, I was seeing kangaroos and different animals out there. So it was sort of needed to incorporate the nature aspect of how it is out there. But the site became about having one communal area that has kitchen, living, dining, and working areas. And then it had separate structures for bedrooms so that different people who lived there would have their own little bedroom and bathroom, which was completely detached from all the others around it. So this one here is looking into the kitchen space, and what you can't see, but on the right is the living space as almost an opposite of the way the kitchen is designed. And that back wall at the end of the kitchen on the right, on the other side of that, there is a working space where people can do all of their working from home, and then they can leave it in there and go back to their own little cottages sort of. And this is just a little idea as to what those spaces could look like, incorporating all of the elements that I researched. So adaptable louvers, there is a large pivot door which can remain closed when needed, or it can open up to change the way that the structure works with the outside area and also change the level of privacy within. And then for the bedrooms, there is the small windows that look up to the sky to develop that earth-sky relationship, but largely the adaptable louver windows change how a person's senses interact with the outside world. It changes the level of privacy, and it also makes it a much more adaptable space. And because they can be easily manipulated by the residents, they also enhance the residents' understanding of their control over their environment. So yes, I will leave the others just because there's too many to go through.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. So let's move on to the next presenter. Rudolf, I believe Lo is ready now. Lo, are you there?
Yeah, seems like.
Apologies, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Lo Kutsi from Cape Peninsula University of Technology. If you could introduce yourself and start whenever you're ready. We can see your slides perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so good day everyone. My name is Lo Kutsi and I'm from South Africa. I just finished the Diploma in Architectural Technology at CPUT, Cape Peninsula University of Technology, which is a 3-year program. I'd just like to thank everyone for the opportunity to present. This is my portfolio. This project means to explore the possibilities that lie in the future of District 6 in Cape Town to uplift the area. We were briefed to design a dance academy, and my concept was to use a large atrium space as a central gesture to let the rest of the program flow from this as if it were a well thought out concrete choreography. This is the floor plan. I always just include these in portfolios to show my competency to potential employers. This is also a District 6 project where we had to design a co-workspace that sits on top of an existing structure. My concept here focused on the exposure of structural elements and the fact that the roof structure is actually completely independent from the mezzanine floor. So as to orientate the roof to face north for maximum sunlight into the workspace. Also just another floor space. You can see it's not the mezzanine floor, but it just shows where it sits. This is a small project, a small competition that tries to answer the question of how we would design in a post-pandemic world. In my concept, each apartment has its own entrance that is separate, completely separate from each other, and you enter a decontamination room before entering the home. My last project focuses, well, there's also another competition that explores businesses that specialize in VR experience. Yeah, I focus on the quest to discover the balance between nature and technology and the coexistence of the real and the virtual. This is done by a path that splits a garden from the VR experience rooms, once you take off the VR headset, you are immediately grounded back to reality. Imagine it to be like that fuzzy feeling you get when exiting a movie theater. And I try to keep it sweet and simple, so that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lo. That was very brief, but sweet and short, like you say. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we'll move on to our next presentation then. Then we come to us at Athabasca University. Teya, if you're ready to present.
Yep, I'm ready.
Teya is one of our students at Athabasca University. So if you could introduce yourself and
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Teya. I am in my 4th year with Athabasca. I am yet to finish my final 2 design studio projects, and so my portfolio is a little bit less technical, but this is what I'm using to apply for some master's programs right now. So I'll just jump right in. My portfolio tries to focus on the impact of architecture in our identity and how this plays such an important role in the way that we just move through life and relate to the world around us. So that's kind of the main theme that's intertwined with all of my projects. But my first project is a transitional living facility. This project focuses on the reasoning behind having architecture like cater to vulnerable people and the importance of placemaking in facilitating healing through architecture and how scale can be used to create a nurturing environment. This page seeks to identify the partie, which is that of rippling water and the importance of water as a healing element in architecture. And it emphasizes community living and how community can bring people together to promote well-being. And that also explains the spatial arrangement of the project. And then these 2 renderings are done to kind of identify the personal experience of being in the space in a different and less technical way. So in a more artistic and humanistic approach of identifying how the users would experience the space and move through the space, and then also the biophilic design properties of the building. And then finally, this page identifies the sustainability practices used in the design of the project. My second project is just a simple habitat that is done in Alberta. And this project explores the impact of human needs and values and behavioral patterns and how this is all impacted by architecture and how architecture can be catered to specifically address these needs. And it also explores very site-specific design approach. And like those other 2 watercolor renderings, these try to capture the personal experience of approaching the house and circulating through the house and moving through the space and the texture and all of these kind of elements that really compose the bigger picture of the architecture project. And then finally, this is my last architecture project that I've included. It is just a very simple shelter. It's a disaster relief shelter, but it was designed to address a crisis that is becoming increasingly common in the Okanagan, which is where I live. And we have pretty intense wildfires there sometimes. And so this project kind of seeks to create an innovative and sustainable way of addressing a potential need for a mass evacuation that would create a community-focused and sustainable option for shelter if large cities had to completely displace because of the fires. And I also included a few of my oil paintings. I've been painting since I was a child, and so I wanted to include these as a personal touch. And then also, I'm really passionate about photography, and I wanted to use this photography project as kind of a final way of coming full circle to that story that I've been trying to intertwine throughout my project of how architecture impacts our movement and impacts our identity and our culture, and how we can use this to engage people in the world around them. So these photos try and showcase people in different ways, kind of interacting with the world, and how we've used architecture to like stage really magical experiences of our lives and kind of use them as the backdrop to the human experience. And that is my portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Teya. Good work. And then last but not least, we have Nick, also from Athabasca University. Nick, could you share your screen, please?
Yep. So hi, everyone. I'm Nick. Like Henry said, I just graduated from Athabasca. The portfolio I'm going to present today is actually what I'm submitting to enter a master's program. Just to tell you a bit about myself, I was in construction most of my life, and I decided to go into architecture because I figured that was the best way to kind of change how the construction industry works, because through better design, we can achieve a lot more. And I also wanted to showcase several skills throughout the portfolio. So there's 5 projects. First is sketching. The second one is the home I'm currently living in, which I built literally 95% of it myself. Then there's a group project and my 2 final studio projects. So real quick, these are just a couple examples. And then as for my home, when I say everything, I literally molded my own kitchen island, which is about 2,000 pounds of concrete. So I basically designed it and then built it myself. This is a group project. It's actually the first group studio at Athabasca. Jessica Williams and I asked if we could actually test group projects in an online setting, and I think we managed pretty well. So I tried to include the areas I personally did. So for example, the renderings, I took care of those. As for the partie sketches, that was more Jess in the initial design, and then the technical drawings, I also took care of that. So this is just basically a community center in Montreal, Quebec. So I'm actually on the east coast of Canada. This is my second to last studio, which is, this is a live work co-op, and this is a community center, also in Montreal. The idea with this design was really to focus on sustainability and an interesting building envelope design. So I kind of included parts of the process, so the sketching, the massing, and then how the floor planes separate the interior spaces. And then if we look at the section, well, that drawing is really to show how the envelope, the tensile fabric used for the envelope kind of gives us the opportunity to decide how much light can enter. And it also allows us to have a mechanical system that can raise or lower the walls. And then this is my final project from my last studio, which I actually used in a professional setting. So I also work for an architect in Montreal, and where we actually submitted this to the client before Christmas, and now we're meeting with the city to get it approved. So a couple sketches just to see how the process or the project developed, and then how I divided the massing. This is just a section showing the different areas within the building. A couple renderings too, just to give an idea of what the feeling and the look of the building will be on the interior. And then on the right is kind of the master plan, the bigger picture of the project. Currently, this is in a suburban area, really commercial, huge parking lot. So the idea is kind of to initiate a movement into densifying suburban areas and regreening parking lots, just really bringing back nature into areas where we really lost it. And then finally, a couple floor plans, just to give a better idea of how the different areas. So we have condo areas, a market area, the large plaza, and then different office spaces. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Super, thanks a lot, Nick. Good work. So now I'd like to start the discussion portion of our session today. I'm going to go around all of our reviewers to ask for your comments, either specific to some of the students' work or as a whole. And also, I'd like to invite anyone in the audience who have any questions or comments to leave your comments and questions in the chat box, and we'll try to circle around to them at the end of the session. So if I can start, maybe to ask one of our guest reviewers to give your comments. Rudolf, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, I'd be happy to start. I'm going to go through the presentations one by one. I've made some notes, starting with Zoe. I think the first project you showed, it's always nice if you've got a relevant topic that you can latch onto as a springboard for the project to show your ability to engage with societal issues through architecture, how that informs each other. In terms of presentation, I liked your use of open space on the page layouts, and I found the layouts to be very well structured. It was easy to follow the logic of the layout from sheet to sheet as you progressed through the presentation. Also picked up that the photographs and the color scheme of the graphics were very well matched. There wasn't a jar, as you often get if you start integrating photographs into the presentation. The plan levels and the 3Ds that you had in your layouts were well matched. It was easy to orient yourself between those drawings, and I think they added value to each other. And also, I think a note for all the students that the way in which you represented the context of the buildings in the plans, especially in the 3Ds, was quite well done. Then moving on to Benjamin.
Thank you.
The pedestrian urban link, I think it was a good rationale. It was very well described rationally. Something that I picked up was that perhaps it would be good to rely more on the drawings themselves to do the talking. There was quite a bit of explaining while you were stuck on one specific graphic. Good development diagrams showing how the form of that first building shifted as a result of contextual informants, and the exploded technical detail 3Ds with the key or the legend on the side was very nice, very accessible, showing a depth of technical knowledge without really having too technical a drawing to work with. So it's still more presentation style drawings. Something that I picked up is when using photographs of models and even 3D render perspectives, just always be careful to the picture and crop the background out. With some of those model pictures, the background was a bit disturbing. Also, frame the picture with care, basically. Then moving on to Lo, I must apologize to Stephanie. I was busy helping Lo sort his audio out, so I didn't see much of your presentation. So sincere apologies for that. On Lo's work, I think that the strategy of using exploded three-dimensional diagrams to show the different levels of a fairly complex building worked quite well, rather than having separate sheets of plans, just plan views. The technological drivers behind particularly the second project with the roof that was spanning across the entire structure was quite clear by means of the diagrams that accompanied the 3D views and the plans themselves. And I think what was nice is that over and above the academic projects that were part of the curriculum that you presented, there was some individual work, competition entries, and so on. And I think that's always a good mix, a strategic choice to show that you have an interest in architecture outside of the studio and the curriculated work as well. Then moving on to Teya's work, particularly your first 2 pages were quite text heavy, but notwithstanding that, I found that it was well integrated into the graphics. So I think there was a balance despite the large amount of text that had. I really enjoyed your graphics, particularly the one page where the contours on the plan on the left-hand side merged into the ridge lines of the perspective drawing. It's a nice, clever trick, a bit of joy in the presentation. Also, the use and the inclusion of watercolor renderings and your oil work is really a scarce skill. Show that you're rounded in terms of the presentation work that you can do. And I think the inclusion of photography is also, I think, a very nice, tightly curated set of photographs like you had to show that you've got an analytical and an architectural eye. And then lastly, to round off with Nick's work, I like doing live and design board projects. So for me, that's always a big bonus if you can include work in a portfolio that shows some experience of taking design work and realizing that insight. I think that's a big benefit that sets you apart from other candidates that don't have that experience. I found the materiality on particularly the timber project 3Ds to be very convincing. Nice to see the renderings with the snow as well. Not something that we see in Cape Town often with our student projects. And then lastly, I think it's a good integration of academic projects and real world work, showing that you can transfer these skills into a work setting. And I gathered that you've got some industry experience, which always helps to not forget about that when compiling your portfolio. Thanks, Henry.
Thanks, Rudolf. And then I'll ask Karen to go next.
Sure. It was great to see the range of work, the portfolios. Thank you. And I want to kind of preface by sharing with the students what you already know. It's a lot of work to pull together a portfolio. I mean, it's really I would say it's a design studio in and of itself, because you test ideas, you try something, you get feedback, you change. And not only that, portfolios are not static. You'll find if you've been updating your portfolio, you'll have discovered this already. It's a living document. So as you insert new projects, but not only that, who you're sending it to, what format it's being received, and as you progress and mature and develop new ideas about how to present yourself, it's going to keep evolving, keep morphing. So I think it's important to remember that, so these kinds of feedback, you should, every chance you can get, do solicit feedback from a variety of different, people. So with that, I'll kind of start out by saying, I think in a portfolio, in most cases, the initial kind of viewing of the portfolio, you're usually not in the room, like you're not presenting it, right? So it's usually sent ahead of you sitting down with somebody, and so that first kind of view is really quick, if you can imagine. So whether you're applying for a graduate program or internships, right? So you can imagine a stack of a bunch of files, a stack of portfolios, and somebody is going through them really quickly to sort them into 2 piles. And so you want to kind of anticipate, that, so you want to design the portfolio and with the audience in mind. And, are they, is it meant to be seen on a screen that's horizontally oriented? Is it meant to be, for somebody to like quickly flip through without really absorbing the information at the first go, to decide, okay, I'm going to come back to that and look at it more closely. So that's really, really important in you organizing your portfolio, because while you are, it's a labor of love for you. So every page, every word, every image, every diagram, you're spending hours and hours and, carefully crafting. For the person who you're trying to reach, they're doing an at a glance of each of the pages or, spreads really quickly. So what you want to do is you want to really kind of, err on the side of communicating rather than cramming or, putting too much information on the page. And so, so basically what you want to, when the person is done flipping through, you want them to retain, even if they didn't really absorb, what the projects were about, and a sense of you as a designer and as a person. And so, which goes to say that, you should, kind of through reflection and through advice, talking with your faculty and peers, you should identify what your kind of, biggest strengths are and really feature that in the portfolio. Like it should be unambiguous, right? I love to draw, I'm really comfortable in the construction field. My strength is, analysis, like that should come across on the first page with a lot of confidence, right? And then I think I'll kind of, I don't know if we're going to cycle back and kind of, have a more discussion and answer students' questions, but I'll just kind of mention one last thing is, so, there's a, the portfolio, whether it's for a school or a job, it's a kind of a foot in the door, right? With a preface to, a relationship, right, that could turn out to be meaningful, right? So whether it's a grad school, or an office, they're trying to get a sense of who you are, because to determine whether you would be a good fit for that school or a good fit for that office, right? So ultimately, that's the final, the most important thing that you have to communicate. And so as the more you can, like I'll use the expression, put yourself into the portfolio. So instead of presenting it at an arm's length about, in a more kind of a objective terms, let's say, I did this, I did that. So not just kind of, passively going through the images and drawings in the portfolio, really kind of convey why it's important to you, right? What was important to you? And, and match that, kind of a, so in a way, all of the projects that are included in the portfolios, there's something that you deeply cared about, right? Something that you're proud of, or something that really drove that design process that semester. So really try to kind of harness that and visually convey what that is. And you can think of it as visual storytelling. Right. So on the one hand, yes, we want to like check the boxes and make sure you have the skills, but more importantly, or just as importantly, we want to know, how you think, how you make decisions, what fires you up, what you care about. And so, if you want to kind of really figure out a way, it could be in how you, frame a certain render, or, how you crop something, or how you choose to leave white space around a particular image or diagram to really highlight it. So that kind of visual hierarchy that speaks to what is important to you, that I think will be kind of my first parting comments. But thanks for sharing your work, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Since Francesco is not here today, I'm wondering if Steve, did you want to make a comment for Curtin University?
Thanks for the offer. Unfortunately, I was corresponding with Francesco for most of the start of it, so I wasn't paying close enough attention to the presentations either.
Okay, well, no worries. We'll post this to the our YouTube channel later on, and maybe you can leave us some comments there afterwards. Then how about Douglas from Athabasca University? Since we have some time, maybe we'll pass it on to us to give some comments as well.
Thank you, Henry. And first of all, I wanted to thank all the students for sharing their work. I know it's always unnerving to have to present, and in this particular case, to a global audience, but it was actually much appreciated. And it's really interesting to see the different kinds of work that is being done around the world. I'm going to make just a couple of brief comments, but one of the things that really did strike me as perhaps one of the older people participating today, when we did our portfolios many, many years ago, of course, we didn't really have computer-aided design. So all of our drawings were pretty much done by hand when we were first applying for work. And so when I see the work that's being done today, the first thing, of course, is that it's extraordinary how much more students are able to do now with beautiful colored three-dimensional perspectives. At the same time, though, sometimes, and I'm not saying this just about the student work that we've seen today, but architecture in general, it all starts to look the same. And that's a very interesting quandary for when you're putting together a portfolio, because as Karen pointed out, you want to stand out. You want people to remember you. So a quick question for everybody is to think about, you just saw a whole slew of work, and probably way too much. It's probably overload for everybody. But what images and pages were the ones that stuck in your minds? And I suspect it'll be different for everybody. But a couple of things that I noted is in a sea of white pages, every so often somebody would throw in some color. And Benjamin, for example, in his work had a black page called Massing Studies, and I can still see it clearly in my mind because it was dramatically different. It was also dramatically different because, in contrast to computer-aided design work, he was showing his massing models made out of blue styrofoam. And this is a very interesting thing. That one stands out. And then also, because we saw a lot of work being done with computers, Teya's oil paintings, all of a sudden you pay attention to that because, well, we haven't seen any other oil paintings. And I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but think about it from your own perspective, which images and pages really stood out for you. And that will be really important. But don't forget as well what Karen said about telling a visual story. And don't forget as well that when you're telling that visual story, the thing that people will see most and for the longest period of time will be your cover page. So no matter how you're submitting your portfolio, when it first comes up on the screen, or if it's a printed document, what people will be looking at first is the cover. So you really want to hit them with something really dramatic that they're going to remember. And with that, Henry, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Douglas. Great comments. And maybe I'll also give talk about some of my notes of what I saw. And maybe I'll talk about them in sets because I felt like some of them are similar and some of them are different in certain ways. And I'd like to echo firstly what Karen and Douglas said about the overall impression of the portfolios. I think that's very important. And I would almost say that you should also include the CV and the cover letter as one package, in the sense that you want the whole thing to be a presentation of yourself. So in some portfolios, they do ask you to include a CV inside of the portfolio. Sometimes it's a separate document, but I do want you to think about it as a whole, in the sense that the portfolio is also part of your curriculum vitae, which is a visual version of it. So what I mean by that is that if you're going to present your CV, you want to highlight what you want people to remember and what is relevant to the particular job or particular school. So the same thing for the portfolio, to make sure that you also edit it and customize it very carefully. It's not an archive of work, but it has to kind of be edited in the same fashion as a CV. Don't think of it as just kind of putting pages together, 10 projects and 10 pages. That's not it. I think you have to think of it as a whole of how it represents you. And I think thinking of it as part of your CV and as part of your cover letter with the cover page of the portfolio is very important, because that's what people remember most. I felt like every school also had its own culture. It was quite clear that, you know, the Academy of Art students had a certain way of doing it. Athabasca students had a certain way of doing it. And I think in time, we also start to recognize which schools students come from because of the university's cultures. So I felt like was it Zoe and Benjamin? I felt like they were very skillful in laying out pages with enough airiness to it so that images become very easily readable. To make sure that there's white spaces, margins, spaces between text and your images is very important. So I think that's a lesson we can learn from the students at the Academy of Arts University. And I think that Zoe in particular has a very strong portfolio when I really like your images and your storytelling and the quality of your presentation. I think something that Karen talked about is maybe think about how the person will see it, because I felt like your pages were very long, and I think maybe it's because of the Zoom screen. Some of your photos or images become very small because you had a lot of them in one page. Some of the photos I felt were very dense. I felt like I would have liked to see a bigger version of it because I couldn't really see what's going on inside. Maybe that was something that I think it was Stephanie who showed it page by page. So whether it's a print version of the portfolio or a screen version is quite important, because that kind of affects how much we will see on the little screen that we have, or is it going to be a printed version of it? I think Benjamin as well had a very strong portfolio. In particular, I really liked Benjamin's colored diagrams that were very clear, and I think stuck in my mind in terms of a very well organized in architecture and well laid out. I also really appreciated that you included sketches in the development of your project, which gives me a clear sense of your design thinking and design process, which I find was not always showing in all of the other portfolios. But my only comment was that some of your renderings felt a little bit lonely, in the sense that there was not people or there was not enough activity in them. So I would suggest you to look at including people, including a sense of place in some of your renderings, just to liven it up a little bit. But again, think of different ways of representations. I think that sometimes some of these renderings start to look very kind of we start to recognize the softwares, you know, we think, oh, this is for sure a SketchUp rendering, or this is for sure something done in something else. So try to find ways that's not just using the basic Lumion tools or basic SketchUp tools, maybe mixing it up with some sketching, mixing it with some watercolor or drawings would make your rendering stand out a little bit more. Stephanie, I think your portfolio was also very strong. I felt like some pages were a little bit text heavy, and you did mention it yourself. And I do appreciate that you did have a master's thesis that was a text, a philosophical kind of approach to it, which I really appreciate the storytelling. But again, I think coming back to what Karen was saying, I think it's important that you make your portfolio visual enough so that it's impactful and that leaves a stronger impression after we've gone through it. So focus more on the visuals in terms of leaving a stronger impression. Lo, I think you have very nice technique, and again, I would focus a little bit more on maybe softness and maybe some sketches or images related to creativity and your process would have helped me understand your portfolio a little bit better. And Teya and Nick, we talk a lot offline anyway, but I think the most, what stood out most for me in Teya and Nick's presentation was the mood in both portfolios. In yours, Teya, you had very nice watercolor kind of renderings that showed spaces, people, and a mood that was very warm, and you talked about healing, and I think that kind of stuck to me because you had a very strong concept and you tried to match it with the mood of your portfolio. As well, Nick, I really liked your climatic renderings. You had the winter version, the night version, the day version. I think that also kind of shows different settings of the building, which I really liked. And with that, those were my comments, and maybe I'll circle around back and give maybe the students a chance to respond or ask questions, if I may. Maybe I'll start with Zoe.
Thanks everyone for all the comments, and it's a really great opportunity for me to join this portfolio reviews. And Thanks for all the suggestions. I think, yeah, and there's like I have a lot more works to like fix and to develop my portfolio. Thank you, everyone.
And then Benjamin, any response or questions that you had?
Sure. For my portfolio, I really wanted to show, kind of really highlight the skills that I put into each project. So, sorry, just trying to really highlight the process of the design instead of just the final kind of outcome of the design. It's kind of how I geared and focused my portfolio.
Ben has a very young child at his house right now. It's fine, Benjamin.
How about Lo? Maybe some comments from you.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for all the input you guys gave. I do agree with that I need to add more process work, drawings and sketches, and add more in uniqueness to my portfolio. I'll take those comments. Well, I won't take them lightly. Thank you for them.
Thanks, Lo. And then Stephanie.
Thanks for the comments. Mine was clearly very different to everyone else's. I really appreciate that. I think I will be going back to mine and sort of trying to rearrange so that diagrams are with images and it's not so, everything isn't so separated. It sort of reads a bit better then.
Teya?
Just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate you all taking the time to come review our portfolios. It's super helpful being able to get this feedback. And thank you, Henry, for encouraging me to do this. I was nervous about it. It's hard putting your work on display for other people, but it's really nice getting feedback and getting the support that we're all looking for, just because the applications they're challenging and they're long. So we really appreciate all the help.
Thanks, Teya. And Nick.
Yep, same for me. Just wanted to thank everyone for the comments, the viewers, the participants. Yeah, we're so absorbed by our own portfolio right now because it's kind of crunch time. So it feels good to get an external opinion. And it's also fun to see the work of others. I mean, I'm sure we all go online and look at examples, but it's different when you're seeing what people are doing right now and having kind of the person explain their work. So yeah, I'm really happy I participated. Thank you for that opportunity. And yeah, good luck to everyone.
Okay, and maybe I'll circle around back to all of our reviewers today to maybe get a final comment after we've heard from everyone. Maybe back to you, Rudolf.
I think something that Curtin said, and I think Douglas mentioned it in the previous session as well, is that the portfolio is a living document. And I can imagine that if it's the first time that you're putting your portfolio together, it's a huge amount of work and having to select and curate, and it's quite overwhelming. But it is a document that you'll be taking with on your career path, and it's really updating it is extremely important. I know from my own experience that I try to get work into my portfolio in the right format so that I can zip my project files and forget about them, so that you don't have to scramble to update your portfolio. So I think in terms of data management, that's a handy skill to have, and it's never as bad as the first time when you're putting your portfolio together, because you've got a solid base to work on. And I think it is important to focus on what Karen also mentioned, that it's a document that needs to tell the story of your strong suits in the profession, to try in as visually appealing a way as possible who and what you are as a professional. Thanks, Henry.
Thanks, Rudolf. Maybe before I pass it to Karen, I'm gonna read out one question that's in the chat box right now. There's a lot of great comments in the chat box that I'll share with all the students later on. But there is one question in the chat box by Sharzad Sultani, who asks, how many group projects should be in a portfolio? And maybe with that, Karen, you could answer the question and give your comments as well.
Sure. I don't know if there's a limit to the number of, number of any certain kinds of projects. I think it really depends on what it is that you have to offer. But like assuming that, I think in most architectural programs, some studios or some projects are group, but others are individual work. So assuming that's the case for you as well, I would make sure that, there are, there's a balance. But if it's the case in your case where you've worked on, more numbers of group projects than is typical, that's a strength, right? So as long as you're very clear about the delineation of, who did what and what your responsibilities were, I think it would be a great way to, feature your, collaboration skills, right? So not just worrying about, well, I want to make sure that, I make very clear that I don't take, credit for my teammates' work, but really like, move the discussion towards what that collaboration, how that went, because whether you're in an academic, graduate environment or work environment, your ability to problem solve within a team environment, not everything is always smooth, right? There are ups and downs. And being able to kind of work, figure out the team dynamics and to, encourage and, bring everybody to the table so that they're all kind of, complementing each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's a terrific asset, right? So if that applies to your case, I would definitely, feature that and use, you might even point that out in your cover letter, right? If that applies to your circumstance. And I think maybe with that, I didn't kind of individualize the comments to the students. So I think I would like to kind of quickly cycle through and offer just a, very quick individualized comments. So I won't go in any order. I'm just going to go by my Zoom tile, so with Teya's, I loved, I was really glad that you included the paintings and the photography at the end. And even in your voice, like you lit up, right? You said words, you use words like passion and, that you've been doing this for a long time. And that says something about how important it is to you. And so, I would definitely encourage you to, include those. But then, kind of channel what you learned, right? What the things that you like to do in your photography and painting into your architectural renderings as well. Right. In photography, you immediately talked about people, right? And in the architectural renderings, I think you are going for a similar kind of sensibility, like I think you use words like personal experiences. So what I heard from that, what I understood from that is that you're really trying to not just give us a generic rendering of a building, but really what it feels like for a specific person to be in that space. So really listen to that and really borrow what cropping like that I'm sure you would do in photography, how whether you put the subject matter in the foreground or in the background, all of those things become storytelling tools, and those are applied directly really nicely to the renders as well. And I felt like beyond just kind of using filters or techniques in Photoshop or other software, really use what your knowledge base in painting and in photography, right, to frame, compose, crop, maybe have a series that have, that moves the render camera, at different distances to the spaces that you want to describe, so that, this one is about, just this one space, right? How intimate it is. And this other one is the zoomed out, the kind of the panoramic view of, so that you can see the site context. So I think those are very applicable. And I think it would be exciting for you to like really, cross over and apply, and then, I think your kind of schoolmate. So Nick's, it was really clear. It was a little bit too dense, definitely a little bit more white space, because in your verbal, it was really clear what each of the pages was about. And I think there's, if you could match what you say about, what you say is important about each of the projects to the visual hierarchy, then it'll match, right? So, your verbal, the hierarchy that you explained to us, verbally will match what we see visually. So like, I think you mentioned the countertop. It seems like it was a pretty involved process. Would love to see, I don't know if you, hopefully you do, right? I'd love to see the process photographs. Were there, kind of a particular, challenging aspect to it that you are proud of, that you want to feature, and not just the finished product. And then there were a lot of really beautiful images in your student projects as well. But again, they were being crowded out by, having to share space on the same page with other drawings. And so I would, even if you have to add additional pages, I would definitely let some of those key images or renders, allow them to breathe on a page, so that, it's really important, like that's the focal point for each of the projects. And I think for Stephanie, it's really interesting that so the degree sounds like it's very writing intensive, and while architecture is a visual profession, and most people expect that visual communication, writing is also super important in this and other professions. So if you have a particularly well-honed writing skill in style, I would figure out a way to feature that, right? So instead of not to say that you were apologetic of it, but why, so just make it very clear that your particular focus in your graduate program wasn't just visual communication, but 70% writing. I mean, that's even, right? So it's not 50-50, it's majority writing. And so, and I'm sorry, and I'm not a writer, so I can't give you comments about how to feature your writing skills, but I just want to convey that in our profession, it's a really important skill. I know of firms, locally in the Bay Area that hire writers, right? Because a lot of architects can't write, right? They actually hire, writers. And so I think that would be an incredible asset, that you want to really make clear that that's what you offer. That's what you bring. And I think I'm low, like really, really beautiful images, great sense of color and composition of the images. So I think it'd be important, I would invite you to try removing or making small some of the texts of the, that are titles of the projects, that are kind of spaced out. So the text, so while, I do love, seeing text become a composition element on a portfolio page, I think in your case, on several of the pages, it was really the drawings that I was like, drawn to. And then the text that were too big was competing for my attention. So I think, in your next round, play around with, quieting the text and having them a very kind of minimal, or a presence that doesn't compete with the powerful graphics.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So maybe we're already at 10:30 in Mountain Time. Douglas, did you want to give us the closing words for today's session, please?
Yes, actually, I just wanted to say I put into the chat box a very, very interesting site that people might want to check out. It's Alex Hogreaves' Visualizing Architecture. He has all the work that's on styles and effects alone can really make your images come alive. So that's in the chat box, and I highly recommend that everybody take a look at it, because it's a very, very interesting site, and he's very talented. So thank you, Henry, and thank you to everybody. This has been a great session, and it's really wonderful to see the student work. I would like to ask people, as thinking about what we do next. As I mentioned, we do have a very interesting session next Thursday at the same time. and on cultural sustainability. And then 2 weeks after that, we have another great session, which I hope everybody will participate in, on equity in design and design education. So January is going to be a busy month for us all. But we would appreciate if people have suggestions on what we might do next. We'd be very interested to hear from you. Other than that, Henry, and to say thank you to everybody, and particularly to you and Veronica for organizing all this. And I should do a shout out to our staff as well, who I know we're not issuing professional development certificates for this one, but imagine they process hundreds of these certificates for everybody. And it's really not in their job to do that, but we appreciate that they do it very, very much. So thank you to everybody. And I'll pass it back to you, Henry, if you want to wrap up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for all of our guest reviewers and particularly the students who took the courage to share your work with the public. And later on, we'll post this on YouTube as well, and you'll get even more comments. I'll make sure that I'll pass on the comments in the chat box as well, because there's a lot of great comments from the audience who has given their feedback of each of the presentations as well. Just a quick correction, Douglas, next week, Thursday, on the 14th, the presentation is 1 hour later than today. It's at
my apologies.
Mountain Time. And the registration is on our website at RAC Architecture, Center for Architecture. And we'll be inviting Zaha Hadid Architects, Principal Architect Patrick Schumacher, with two of his associate directors at the firm, as well as Professor Brian Sinclair at the University of Calgary, who will be speaking on the topic of culturally sustainable design. So you're all invited, and I hope to see you there next week. With that, I'd like to wrap up the session, and thank you again to everyone who joined today.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.